This is the apartment that the defendant lived in with his girlfriend at the time, Catherine McDonough, back in October of 2012. It's in this apartment that Lizzie Marriott was raped and murdered.
By strangling her and/or suffocating her.
It's from that point that the defendant and McDonough dumped Miss Marriott's body into the Piscataqua River.
I can tell you that they were familiar with one another and that this was not a random incident.
We were all so sad at this tragedy.
No matter what comes out, she didn't volunteer for this.
Do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Seth Mazzaglia strangled 19-year-old Lizzie Marriott. He'd had sex with her after she was dead. Mazzaglia claims he accidentally killed Marriott during what he called a consensual sex act involving restraints. Now, he's appealing the guilty verdict. I'm back with Yodit, Lonnie, Jenna, and joining us, Pat Lalama, managing editor, Crime Watch Daily with Chris Hansen. Pat, what is the latest?
I think this is going to be an extraordinary argument, Dr. Drew, and it's going to be a rabid one, so I'm ready to duck when we get into this debate because it has to do with the coveted shield law, which protects all women, or anyone, if you want to argue that, from their sex lives being used as a weapon against them. So essentially, I'll try to make it as simple as possible. Mazzaglia says, hey, this was a sex game. There was no really basic intent to kill this woman, and it was consensual, and she was into it. And so if the jury had known that the first go around, then I wouldn't have had life in prison. I think we need to open up her records to show that she did have this past, and therein lies the argument. Is there zero tolerance when it ever comes to opening up those shield laws?
Yodit, release it or not?
You know what? This is really hard. Let me tell you why. Obviously, these laws were put in place to remove the barriers that kept women from coming forward about being raped and to actually win convictions. However, I do understand the criticisms, especially me being a defense attorney now, where it can deny a defendant's right to a fair trial. How can he honestly confront his accuser if he can't get into situations or evidence which would mean her past or an accuser's past sexual history, if that is what is critical to his defense? So I understand both sides. I'm eager to see what the court is going to rule on this, because it will change cases forever.
Lonnie, release or not release?
Do not release. Look, this judge has really gone out on a limb here. During the trial, the defense made this argument. They said this was a sex game gone bad. We need to be able to talk about the victim's sex life. The trial judge said no. The defense appealed it, and the appellate court said, look at this again. The trial court again said, no, it's irrelevant to the case. It's inadmissible. Now it goes up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, on its own motion, said, you know what? You need to unseal these documents even before I make a ruling on the issue. Now, the proper way the judge should be doing this is all this information is already submitted to the judge, unredacted, but under seal. The judge can look at it in camera in his chambers and decide at that point, is there something here for the defense or not? And if he rules against the defense, you never unseal those documents. If you unseal them now and then the judge says, you know what, this shouldn't have ever come in, it's too late. The victim's privacy has already been violated. And believe me, every victim of a violent crime, a sexual violent crime, is watching this case.
Now, 6 weeks before the murder...
Lonnie, he's not unsealing them.
That's what he's asking to do, is that it be revealed. That's exactly what he's asking to do.
They're having but they're having arguments. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, September 21st are the oral arguments, and that's probably when you'll hear why we think they need to be open. And any judge, I do agree, any high court judge should do due diligence and look at the facts, because the family, and you can imagine how torn apart the family is about this matter, who wants this dragged through the public. But, you know, they're saying anything about her sex life is disputable. It's not, it's unreliable. You know, they're arguing that a lot of it isn't even true. And how do you figure you have to go through a whole process of determining when, where, why, and with who? But I do see, and I've asked a lot of people today here in the newsroom their thoughts about it, and a lot of people do see that it's an interesting argument on the part of the defense. The problem is, do we open the floodgates whereby, you know, we basically rip to shreds the shield law, which is so important?
Here's a text message. This guy Seth sent to his girlfriend before the murder. Here's part of it. Quote, the second price is this. You choose a friend any of yours will do, and you offer her to me, that I may do anything I wish with her while you watch and assist in any way I might command. Right. Ideally, this friend watches your punishment and helps, but I'll settle for someone who I interact with directly while you watch. Jenna, it's getting suspect.
Yeah, so this is somebody who's definitely a sadist, right? This is somebody who enjoys inflicting pain, obviously, and has some interesting paraphilias here. So, you know, typically people with these type of sadistic preferences do this because they sort of crave this feeling of power and authority and dominance. And of course, that leads back to childhood issues of feeling weak and insecure. But I thought what was so interesting about these messages was just how chilling they were and how serious he takes that.
Yes, and there's more. We have more to show you. And the girlfriend testified against him, but she gave sort of a rambling, confusing version of the events of what happened when they brought this girl, Lizzie, back to the apartment. Take a look.
But that included restraints, correct?
Yes.
An oral sexual act, correct?
Of the second one? No.
Where you were on top of Miss Marriott?
Yes, but there was also duct tape.
Indeed.
Because I remember that detail because that was a detail that I hadn't had in my initial story. That was a detail that you guys brought up. You said, what about the duct tape? And I was like, duct tape? So I said that her duct tape was her mouth was duct taped shut. Again, that's not something that actually happened.
Oh my God, Pat, I can't follow any of that. This is not a good witness.
Yeah. Well, none of these witnesses. In fact, there were 33 witnesses, and one of them was a very good friend. She is a tarot card reader. There you go for characters, right? Not that I'm condemning tarot card readers, but she was called by Seth Mazzaglia to come over after it all happened. So she comes over with her boyfriend, and they see the body, and they talk about calling for help, but he doesn't, and neither does she. But she claimed on the stand that Seth, the defendant, says, oh my God, I've gone too far. Oh my God, I've gone too far, which might imply that in his mind it was just a game that went too far. And his whole argument, Dr. Drew, is that there was no intent, that if this was an accident and he could prove that it was just a game that got out of hand, that would mitigate. It's not a defense for what happened, but would mitigate his life without parole.
All right, we'll keep this conversation going. And later, 2 underage girls